This meeting is being recorded.
Yes, it is. That's right. I love how that lady pops up. She's become a new friend, hasn't she? Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming along this morning. I know that this particular topic has popped up because someone within the group was talking about their own experiences of having a client who was talking about ideas of suicide and was confronting for her, and she wasn't quite sure exactly how to deal with that. And you know, we're kind of very fortunate that we have someone like Clive in our group that has spent many years volunteering for Lifeline and doing some incredible work there, and has probably had to deal with this situation more times than many of us have had hot dinners. So the fact that Clive has offered to be able to talk through some of this today for us and provide this really valuable resource is something that I'm really grateful for. So with that, I'm going to shut up. And I'll pass it over to Clive and let Clive.
Yeah, you might have to shut me up after a while. That's the only thing.
Look, it's fine. You can talk as much as you want.
Once I start, I can't stop. So I have actually put a few bullet points down, which I don't normally do because I'm pretty random at times. Yeah, so I got into this whole thing. I've actually seen firsthand 2 suicides. One was on a train platform in London, and the person next to me just jumped in front of the train. That was a bit kind of surreal. And then I was in a office in London, and just looking out the window, I had a window, and directly across from me, you know, probably only about 10 meters away, I thought it was a worker on a roof, but it was actually a guy, and he just jumped. I thought, oh, okay, that's weird. So in the moment, and as probably many of you are, you probably know people as well, you know, but having seen it, it's kind of surreal. And you kind of wonder, what's it taken for someone to get to that point where they just want to end it all? And what I've noticed, and again, many of you probably know this anyway, is that people don't kill themselves to kill themselves. They just want to deaden the pain, whatever that pain is. You know, it could be emotional pain, it could be physical pain, it could be, you know, they don't necessarily want to end their life. They just want to stop the pain. I've heard that so many times. You know, I don't want to kill myself, but I just can't stand the pain. Yeah. So then, oh gosh, I don't know when, I think it was about 2012 or so. I got into the whole mental health thing, and I thought, oh, I'll give Lifeline a go. Because my mother was also, she was in the UK, she was a Samaritan. And in those days, that was really weird because it was a lot more, you know, they'd actually go and sit with people and not just talk to them on the phone. They'd actually go and visit them and sit with them, but they weren't allowed to tell the police or intervene. So that was, you know, really weird. And funnily enough, I think today I heard on the radio, it's Lifeline's 70th anniversary, or 70th or 60th or something, and how it all started. And so I got into, I thought, well, I might give this a go. And I started off by doing like the mental health first aid, which was useful. And then I did the assist course, which was the advanced interventions, suicide interventions. That was all around the time when I was getting sort of registered properly as a hypnotherapist. So I thought, well, I better learn some more stuff. And then through those 2 courses, I thought, you know what, I might try Lifeline. And it was possibly the best training in terms of counseling training that I'd ever had. The variety was massive. There was role plays all the time. Every scenario you could dream up, they'd role play it, something. And even in the training, people were getting triggered and having to leave. And that's why they include such a huge variety. And I just want to jump ahead. One of the routines you had to perform before every session, or call it a session, 4-hour session, was that you had to answer a question. It was written on the screen above you. Do you really want to be here today? Because if you're not in the right emotional state, then you can't do the most important thing, and that's connect with somebody. It's all about connecting. And if you're distracted because you've had an argument, or you're rushing or whatever, you just sit there. First 5 minutes, you've got to sit there and go, yeah, I'm good. And many, many times I've gone, nah, I'm not here today. So you develop this self-awareness of whether or not you have the ability to connect to another human in a distress situation. Okay, so that's the same when we're doing therapy. You know, you might be in a bad mood for whatever reason. You can't be arsed seeing somebody, yet you think, oh, I need the money. And you're not going to do a very good job because you're not going to build proper rapport. And the difference between seeing someone face to face and listening to someone on the phone is, you know, there's a big difference, but you still got to build rapport. And sometimes that's extremely difficult with someone who's distressed. So, and typically what people tend to do is give advice, you know, you'll be okay. It will work out. It'll be fine. Why don't you try this? And that's the biggest mistake, the biggest rapport breaker, because you're assuming you know what's going on in their world and you just don't. So when you connect with someone for the first, what you've got to do is you've got to listen to their story. You've got to just listen, really listen. And this is what I learned, which has helped me the most, is my ability to pick up words in the other person, in the conversations. Because you can just let one word go by in a situation where there's potential suicide and you've missed it. And what they called it, they used to call them invitations. So you're listening out for an invitation to take the dialogue in a more suicide kind of way. You know, someone might be speaking to you, oh, a really bad day, oh, God, I'm just sick of all of this. I just can't put up with this anymore. Now, if you're answering the phone at Lifeline and you hear someone say, I just can't put up with this anymore, you don't let it go. You don't assume you know what that means. So what you might do is you might echo it back, saying, oh, okay, gee, and validation. So you sound really, really stressed out. You sound like you've had a terrible day. I can hear the anger in your voice or the frustration. So you validate. Okay, this is helping you to connect and build rapport. And then you might say something along the lines of, look, I know you just said that you can't put up with it anymore. Can you tell me more about what that means to you? Okay. And they might just say, oh, no, I can't stay in this relationship, or I can't, blah, blah, blah. Or they might say, I'm just so sick of it, I'm going to end everything. And you go, whoa. You don't go, by the way, you don't go, wow, in any of those conversations. Wow is a big no-no. So you've got to be able to listen to their story, because half the I don't want to use the word game, but half of the game is to actually let them simmer down and listen, because they're not used to being truly listened to, because people are telling them what to do or giving them advice. They're not letting them vent or tell their story or being validated. So listening to the story is where you begin to perhaps notice what might be what we used to call an invitation. And the invitation is to explore the possibility that someone might want to kill themselves. And it's so damn easy to miss. See, when I was training people at Lifeline, we used to sit next to students, and they'll be nervous as hell, as you'd expect, you know, taking their first call, and you weren't allowed to prompt them. You'd let them actually work out what worked and what didn't work for them. You could sometimes, if it's something really, really important, quickly write something on a note and pass it to them. And the number of times I've heard students have misheard or not heard the invitation to what was seemingly a benign whinge. Okay, so I'd write, just explore what they mean about that. And they go, oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, you said earlier, you know, that you know, you've been depressed recently. And sometimes when people get depressed, you know, they get really, really seriously down. How are you at the moment? I'm going to kill myself. And then the student's like, holy shit. So the invitations are what you've got to listen out for. Anything that might suggest lack of hope, lack of possibility. There's no way out. I've tried everything. I can't take this anymore. I'm sick of it all. I just want it to end. All those are really, really obvious invitations to explore what do they mean about that. Okay, so let's just halt it there. Does that, have you got any questions with that so far? Or any observations, or does it resonate or not? Anything? No? It's okay. None? Yeah, good. All right, cool. All right. So listening and connecting. And you connect through allowing the person to tell their story without giving any advice, without being judgmental, without interrupting, for God's sake. And if someone's quiet, you know, people hate silence. I've sat there when someone's gone quiet, and I'm not going to, you know, for about 5 minutes, I'm saying nothing. And then they say something. You got to have the ability to sit with silence, because in that silence is when someone might be thinking how they're going to say what they need to say. Okay, think of it as they're giving you the invitation to come to their party. Yeah. Now, there's other things which you must not do, which you're told in the traditional kind of active listening training people get, you know, like paraphrasing. You don't do that. You said earlier you wanted to put an end to it all. No, I didn't. I said, I can't stand this anymore. So if you paraphrase and it's not and it's not exactly what they said, you're going to break rapport. So that's why you got to echo. Echo is a fantastic skill. You listen out for stuff, and when you've got the opportunity not to interrupt, you might go, yeah, end it all. Can you tell me a little bit more about what that is, what that means to you? Yeah. So echoing is a brilliant skill. Silence is sitting comfortably with the silence. You have to be able to do that. Not paraphrasing. Do not paraphrase. Don't say, wow. Wow. Oh, shit. Now, I have been the most inappropriate, funnily enough, telephone counselor in certain situations where I have built such powerful, deep rapport with the person after maybe an hour or so that they've started to reveal a bit of a sense of humor. And I might, if it's appropriate, I might, what's the word? You know, just when you say something about yourself, I might offer something about me, which can help them see that I'm also a human, not a chatbot. So, and in one situation, for example, I mean, I'll get to humor in a minute, but in one situation, I had someone on a platform at Flinders Street Station, and they rang up, and I could hear the train in the background. And I said, yeah, what's happening for you? Because I was going to go see my counselor. There's a bit of an invitation there. I've got a lot of information already. She's in a train station. She's seeing a counselor, but she's not going to do that now. Okay. So, okay. I go, I notice I can hear you're in a train station. Are you going anywhere? Yeah, I was going to see my counselor. And this woman was really, really prodding me to ask the typical, are you thinking of killing yourself? Yeah. But I wasn't going to do that because I could help. She was itching for a fight. You could tell she was itching for a fight to really put me in my place. I said, oh, okay. And I just went off and started talking about something different so she wouldn't get, and then she's going on, and so I took time just to not go down that one too quickly, but got her talking about herself and other bits and pieces. Like, you know, where do you have to go to see a counselor? You know, maybe somewhere like, you know, Packingham or somewhere like that. Oh, okay. Is it a nice place down there? You know, just rubbish conversation, but it was distracting. Anyway, after a while, she goes, look, I am going to do it, you know. I said, oh, I know that. I didn't need to ask. I know you're going to do it. She goes, what do you mean? I said, well, I know you're going to do it. You've effectively told me you're going to do it. And she goes, I'm going to do it now. I said, just before you do it, can I just say one thing? And I'm not supposed to say this to you. And she went, what? And I told her about that train station incident I was in London. I said, I was on a tube in London waiting for the train. And I was just waiting. I was just about to go to work, you know, just have a normal day. And this person, possibly in the same state of mind as you, right next to me, just jumped in front of the train. I said, I've never forgotten that. And she said, oh, shit. She goes, there's all these school kids here. I said, look, why don't you just take a seat and let's just have a chat. And when someone is in that dire straits, you can use phrases like, you know, look, what's it, how, tell me, you must be in desperate pain. What's it taken for you to get to this state? What's happened? What, you know, you've, this is the day you're going to do it. What's happened? Tell me about that. And after a while, I talked her onto the train all the way to her counsellor's office. Now, I was shitting myself at the time, don't get me wrong. You know, when you've got something like that, you say, oh, holy crap. But then I've had other ones where it's been absolutely, I'm sorry, this is people, you've got to have a black sense for humor sometimes, where I won't give the details specifically, but someone rang and said, if you don't get me some help, I'm going to try it again. And then he told me what he'd done. And I actually thought it was so hilarious. I actually said, well, you fucked that up, haven't you? And he started laughing his head off. Now, I've found that in the moment when you can get, and this was after quite a long conversation, when you can get a little bit of lighter emotion in them, then they come round. I mean, because if someone's weeping their eyes out and everything else, you're not going to be able to have a conversation or try and find out what's happening or how you can help. But you've got to be able to listen to their story and allow a long time, if necessary, to connect. Okay. Now, when someone does say something like, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it this time or something. And you know, you might have asked the question, look, are you thinking of suicide? And at Lifeline, they drummed it into us. Do not say, are you thinking of harming yourself? Are you thinking of killing yourself? No, you've got to use the word suicide, because it's sort of, it kind of makes them reflect more that they're not just killing themselves, they're committing suicide. It's a lot.
What's happening?
So, sorry, Jack.
No.
No, God, I thought I had a question. And so, so you've got to use the word suicide when you think it's getting there, it's getting to that point, and you're suspicious. You've just got to be comfortable saying, "Look, I just need to know. Are you thinking of suicide?" And you would be surprised the number of times someone says yes, and you didn't really think they were. Okay. Now, I will ask that question in most of my sessions, but I do it in a way which is a bit sneaky, because I use that, as a lot of you might know, I use that kind of physical positioning where, you know, there's different versions of you, and there's one version over there, 10 out of 10, life's fantastic, and there's you here today, and then there's that version over there. We know what that one's like. They're probably going to kill themselves. Oh, yeah. And then I'll just say, are you thinking of suicide? And I've had yeses quite a few times. So if you get a yes, you've now got to assess the immediate risk. By that, there's a few things. Well, have you tried suicide before? No, but I used to self-harm. Have you tried suicide before? Yeah, it didn't work that way. Oh, what did you do? And it's okay to be curious. You'd be surprised how many people, once they've said yes to the suicide question, will tell you everything you need to know, because answering yes was the hardest bit. So now you've got to assess the immediate risk. Are they an immediate risk now, today, tonight? So you need to know. I've had people leave the office. I might have told some of you about this. I had one guy came in. It had 25 electroconvulsive, whatever they are. And he was like, I don't even know why someone brought him to me. Anyway, he wandered off to the toilet. And then after a while, I became suspicious. I went out and he was about to jump in front of a bus. So that's kind of super immediate risk. Okay. But you need to ask, Okay. When were you thinking of doing it? How are you going to do it? Have you got a plan of how you do it? Don't be too sort of clinical. What is your plan?
We do actually have a question, Clive.
Yeah, go.
Well, Lily, you've got your hand up there. Is there a question?
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Lawrence. Yeah, Clive, I'm interested from a hypnotherapist point of view.
Yeah.
When you engage in that conversation, when somebody has reached out to for help, obviously, when they make that call or reach out in whichever way they do, that parts therapy seems to be, in my mind, an obvious tool to dig into. So it's like there's a part of them that has made the call.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you brought that one up, actually, because one of the very common things that you might hear is someone said, like, I'm going to do it, but I'm too scared, or I'd do it, but I've got to look after my dog. So there's that split in parts. Part of them wants to do it, you're right, but part of them, and that is something that you've got to then take. Like, you've got a dog, have you? Yeah. What sort of dog is it? And you start talking about that, but without therapizing, get into therapy specifically, because I've got to know what the immediate risk is. Is there an immediate risk? That trumps any therapy.
Understand.
Okay, because if it means I've got to call the police right now, then I've got to call the police right now. If I've got to somehow make sure they get home safe and there's someone waiting for them, then I need to make sure that happens. I need to make sure that if their parents don't have the critical assessment team number from your local mental health authority, then they've got it and they know what to do. Okay, so I wouldn't be as bold to be saying what techniques or whatever, but the idea of part of them still keeping alive because of that other thing, 100%. I'd like to, I wish I could kill myself, but I'm too scared. Yeah.
I just wondered if that would allow a little bit more time, if needed, to get more conversation out of them.
Yeah. Because
rather than going into the therapy itself, but just to give yourself a little bit more time with them.
Yeah, definitely. Because what you're doing there is you're talking about, look, I know I'm hearing that you want to kill yourself, but there's a bit of a disconnect, or there's a bit of ambiguity, because there's part of you that doesn't, so tell me more about that. What's keeping you from doing it? Because by talking about what's stopping them from doing it, you're able to figure out what strengths or what resources they have that's keeping them alive. Oh, I'm only staying alive because of my daughter. Okay. So there's always, I consider that part that's stopping them from doing it a resource which you can explore more about, and then perhaps come up with some sort of plan. So all the counseling that we did was Rogerian, or Carl Rogers, Rogerian style, non-judgmental. What's the full phrase, Lawrence?
Person-centered therapy. It's non-judgmental, congruent. It's
so good. It's so good at just being able to get someone to talk, as opposed to, how do you feel about that? Tell me more about your childhood. That would drive people to suicide, I reckon. So you're absolutely right. Consider that part as a resource that you explore. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And
so
Helene,
you go
as well, I think, too, by the looks of it. Helene, your hand up there.
Oh, me? Yes. Clive, yes, just a question. You said two separate things.
Yeah.
One was, are you going to suicide? And then when you were speaking a few sentences later, you said, are you thinking of?
Yeah.
Suicide?
I guess it's context specific, really. I think usually it's, are you thinking of suicide?
Yeah.
Okay. And then if they say yes, well, when are you thinking of doing it, or when are you going to do it? Okay. because it obviously starts with a thought in their head. So are you thinking? Are you contemplating? Have you thought of suicide?
Okay.
Okay. Always establish if you get a yes. So let's just move from you've heard a yes, and all of a sudden your heart rate goes up, which it will if you haven't had this yet. I remember one guy sat in front of me. He came in for porn addiction many years ago. It was late one night, and he was a Hulk of a fella, massive, about 6'8", big bloke, and he just looked like, you know, his face was white. He had this faraway stare in his eye. I thought, I'm not sure about this guy. And I misheard him. Because I was probably being intimidated by him. And I said, I was asking about something. I thought he said, I've met another nurse. He actually said, I said, you met a nurse? He goes, no. I said, I've made another noose. Okay, heart rate goes, expect your heart rate to go. So this is the thing. This is the value of role playing or knowing your personal state. If someone says to you, yes. Now, how are you going to react? Well, you're going to react a lot better if you've got some sort of formula. So the next stage is, well, when so you're saying you're thinking of committing suicide. When do you think you'll do it? That gives you a time frame. And they give you a time frame tonight. Okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? I'm going to slip my wrist in the bath. I had that about 4 weeks ago. I'm going to slip my wrist in the bath. You must think I deal with some. It's just that I pick up on the invitations, and I ask. This woman was just deeply depressed, and when I said, "Oh, look, you're even worse over there. You're probably going to, you know, jump off the bridge or something," she goes, "Yeah, I know." I said, here we go. There's the invitation. Let's explore that one now. You see, you can introduce it in a light-hearted, non-threatening way, just by contrasting. You know, if things keep going really downhill for you, I mean, you're probably going to be like a 1 out of 10. And you're probably thinking is committing suicide or something. Yeah. I've been there before. So there's an invitation to explore. So I ask it without being all serious, all sort of formal. But so the next thing is when and how. So, because that will give you a time frame, and if they've got the means. Okay. I went to see one guy, remain nameless. He had a Dr. Nishki death kit. Okay. What? I didn't know there was such a thing. I've heard of Dr. Nishki. Have you heard of Dr. Death in the Northern Territories? But he had the full Dr. Nishki death kit. But he took precautions, because what he did was he split it in half. He had one half in his apartment, the other half in his office. So he really had to think about long and hard about if he was going to do it. And when I asked him if he's going to, he goes, yeah, I've got them both in the flat now. Oh, this sounds immediate. Before it was just a pending risk. Now it's fully committed. That's immediate risk. So have they got the means, or do they know what they're going to do? And are they going to do it in the 20 years time or in the next 10 minutes? That's your risk level. If someone's in front of you and they're saying, yeah, I'm going to kill myself as soon as I leave here, I've had enough. What would you do?
I'd probably be asking them, so where do you think you'll go? Or,
yeah, I'm gonna.
What do you
as soon
think?
as I've got a gun in the car, I'm just going to shoot myself when I leave here. You ring 000.
Well, but you'd still be talking to him. Like, I'm dealing with this all the time at the moment. I'm working on a government line, but you've got to keep them talking while that's happening.
Yeah,
right?
look, you just ring. Look, I've said to people, oh, thanks a bloody lot. I said, it's me in the coroner's court. Now I'm going to have to call the cops. Unless we can come up with a plan of action. What do you mean a plan of action? And then there could be something which I made a deal with a guy. I said, look, He was raped when he was he's a straight guy. He was male raped when he was 14 and then got HIV. Can you believe that? I'm unlucky. Anyway, he was going to kill himself. This was a real eerie late night session, you know, about 9 o'clock at night. And he was clearly traumatized. And I'd spent the whole session exploring his story. No therapy. Got the yes out of him. Got the immediate risk out of him. I said, look, and I liked him and he liked me. I said, look, here's the deal. You stay alive until Sunday. Come see me on Sunday. You stay alive till Sunday and I'll get rid of that trauma for you. How's that? He went, what? Can you do that? I said, yeah. He said, but I've tried everything. I said, you haven't tried this. No problems whatsoever. He had PTSD, flashbacks, all that stuff. And if you know anything what I do, I use my modified rewind and I'm very confident with that. And anyway, we had multiple sessions after that. It was a bit risky, but I got the sense that he was agreeable and he liked me. He didn't want me to end up in the coroner's court. And this was just after, do you remember that woman, I think it was in Queensland, who jumped off a cruise liner the day after she'd seen a hypnotherapist? Do you remember that story? Blasted all over the news. Woman suicides after seeing a hypnotherapist. It's like, who wants that? No way. So you either make a plan of action. What can they do? Well, you could utilize, look, I'm absolutely 100% certain that I can help you with all these issues, these things. I've got some, you know, no problems at all. But you've got to stay alive long enough to give me a chance. Can you come see me tomorrow? Yeah, okay.
Another question as well, by the way, Clive.
Yeah.
Thanks, Clive. So can I just ask, I don't know if this is pushing it too far, but question, like saying things like, you know, go back to that guy that's got a gun in the car, he's going to shoot himself. Geez, you know, geez, it's going to be messy for someone to clean up. That's, you know, like. Yeah,
it's, I used something very similar with a guy. This was just like, you can't make these things up. And you can't come up with a role play for this one. I got a guy call me. He was in far north Queensland somewhere. He was blind and he'd been going to work every day for the year on the train. Yeah, he'd lost his job a year before. And he didn't have the guts to tell his wife he'd lost his job. And he's blind. And what tipped him over the edge was he wasn't allowed to get a new guide dog for some reasons. For some reason, he wasn't allowed to get a new guide dog and he'd had enough. It was like a scene from, what was that movie, Breaking Down or whatever it was, with, was it Michael Douglas or someone, where he just goes, that's it, boom. That was it. Blind guy, lost his job. He couldn't get a new guide dog. So he considered that his life would be better off, well, his wife would be better off with his insurance, because he was about to foreclose on the mortgage as well, because he couldn't pay it anymore. He tried everything. So in his backpack, he had a replica gun. And what he was going to do is he was going to go into a police station, point it at the policeman and get himself shot. Suicide by proxy. It's common, that, by the way. And I said for a moment, oh, geez. I just think about those poor young cops who hope they'd never have to do anything like that and how it would be stuck with them for the rest of their lives. So I thought what he was doing was really, really stupid, in other words. So I didn't say what you're doing is really, really stupid. I just made him reflect on what the cops how they would feel. You know, just some young probationary constable having to shoot someone, a blind man dead. Oh my God, can you imagine that one? Hanging over your head for the rest of your life. And it sunk in. And eventually I found him a financial counselor. He thought he'd tried everything, but I found him a financial counselor. And fortunately, it was a public holiday the next day. And so he couldn't see that counselor until the following week or something. And he was so excited and his whole mood lifted and he was no longer going to do it. And he started telling me stories. He says, do you know what the worst thing about being blind is? I said, no. Now we're just chatting away, having a great old chat. He goes, well, next time you see a blind guy walk down the street, have a look at their shins. What? He goes, you bump into everything. It was, and like, we got such a good, we built such, it was a different person. But it involved some of that, a little bit of guilt tripping, but also finding him a resource which gave him hope and possibility. And it was something that he just hadn't tried or thought he'd tried for, looked for, but just couldn't find. So yeah, a bit of guilt tripping, which I did with the girl on the platform. Like I say, I shared my own personal story with her. And yeah, sometimes some black humor when it calls for it. Oh God, I could tell you some strange ones. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not making fun of it. These are the sorts of things that go on, right? Someone called me and they said, oh, look, I've taken an overdose. I've just woken up. I said, oh, what did you take? Oh, whatever it was. I said, when did you take it? She goes, Tuesday. I said, today's Friday. Oh, why? And the poor woman was in a bedroom all that time. Her husband was still in the house. He couldn't care less. Unbelievable. She goes, I can't let him know. I've got to go to the hospital. I said, you're going to the hospital. Otherwise, I'm going to send a cop round there now. Because that's what I had the power to do. She goes, okay, but what can I tell my husband? Just say you've got some really bad stomach cramps. Okay, I can do that. So I'm formulating a plan with her. You know, what can you do? What can you do? You've got to suggest things. You've got to try and find out what strengths they have, you know, what resources they have. Who's at home? Who can you talk to? What are your friends like? You know, tell me more about your dog.
We do have another question, Clive.
Yeah.
Now, which is great. Yvonne has a question for you.
Yeah. Which one's Yvonne? Where's Yvonne?
Yvonne, you need to unmute yourself.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh, you keep moving around. Everyone keeps moving around.
Yeah. I did Lifeline training way back in the 90s, and I think it's changed a bit since.
It has.
Yeah, on what you ask and what you talk about. But also now, as a hypnotherapist, I don't usually get people calling me up, you know, wanting to do counselling over the phone or whatever. It's usually for hypnotherapy. And I've been really scared off of working with people that are that depressed that they're suicidal, because I've had one event way back where I just said, I am never working with people who are still that bad again. And I've also been warned basically, or, you know, told you do not work outside your scope of practice.
That sounds like Gordon Young.
Oh, well, it wasn't him, but I mean, other people were just saying, you know, stay in your own lane, do not work outside. And so my question is, if like, well, what I've been doing lately is if I'm talking to someone and they're wanting to have a session with me, and if I think they're, you know, just a bit too over the top for me, I refer them on, you know, and I would say, but if I ever did get someone, which I haven't yet, that says, oh, I'm going to kill myself now. And like even working with Lifeline, you know, they used to say, you know, go to your mental health, you know, go to your hospital and all these plans that you can, or steps they could take. But I was told too that, you know, trying to get into hospital or to see someone, you got like a 6-month waiting list and all these issues where they go to the hospital, people send them home, you know. So I'm sort of in a quandary there of what best, you know, you want to help them to a point. Okay, I've got it. Firstly, everyone can relax, because I doubt you're going to get a query from someone saying, I want hypnotherapy to stop my suicidal thoughts. I wouldn't go, I'd possibly stay clear of that. Okay, but you might have someone who's traumatized or depressed, who he's not giving the obvious signs that they could go that way. And that's when you'd explore whether or not it was an immediate possibility. But if there is an immediate possibility, there's a number of things. So for example, when was it? It was Christmas time. It was this last Christmas. And I was seeing this alcoholic who was in a really bad way. He was going on. Apparently I was the only one who could save him. Right.
He'd been in and out of rehabs. He'd done all this and this, that, and the other. And, you know, he'd been to psychiatrists and psychologists and everything. You wouldn't believe it. Anyway, his mother rang me. I'd seen him a couple of times and he was really doing all right. He was doing a lot better. And she remarked on that as well. She goes, oh, look, he's so pleased with, you know, what's happening and stuff. But his ex-wife called yesterday and she won't let him see the kids. And now he's just tripped out. And he says, you're the only one who can help him. It was like Christmas Eve or something. So he's drank a huge bottle of hand sanitizer, a bottle of meths, and a bottle of gin or something. And the AMBOs have been, and they've just left him here. They won't take him, or whatever. They released him from hospital almost straight away. I said, did you, and she goes, no one's available. I said, did you, what? So she was in New South Wales, and every state's slightly different. But you've got these, what they call critical assessment teams, CAT teams. You know, you could look at Victoria Mental Health Services, and there'll be a number. And these people will come around to your house. If you're a concerned like parent, partner, or whatever, you can just say, look, I'm really worried about my son. He's been talking about, you know, seeing spaceships, you know, balloons, Chinese balloons, UFOs. And I'm really worried about him. And he sort of started talking to himself and muttering about killing himself and people. And well, I'd be calling the cops. That one's a bit extreme, but I'd be calling the cops in that case. And you, by the way, you always call the cops. You don't call the ambulance. Always call the cops, not the ambulance, because you don't ring 000 if you're in Australia and say, can I get an ambulance, please? No, it's cops. For a number of reasons. One is they've got the ability to break into premises. Someone might have locked themselves at, you know, in a room, or they might have not let you in the house, or they might be armed, or you know what I mean. And cops are magnificent in those situations. I cannot praise cops highly enough. I've been there on the phone with someone for about 2 hours, talking to them until they've agreed for me to get them some. And we always used to say, look, let me get you some help. You wouldn't say, I'm going to send the cops around. Let me get you some help. And I've been there until the handover, and I've actually spoken to the cop when he's picked up the person. Yeah, mate, we've got him now, blah, blah, blah. But I've heard how they speak to them, those people in that situation. They are so good. Now, I'm not saying there's not going to be a situation where they're not, but majority of the time, they're so good in those situations. They're probably the frontline workers in mental health, cops. They've got a lot of bloody experience in it. Just where I am right here, you know, across the road, I've got the RPA hospital. I've got the massive housing commission. I've got something called Abbey Road, which is feeding the homeless. And there's people, and there's ice heads all over the place, you know, the teeth hanging out. And it's constantly cops. And they're not threatening. They're just sitting, yeah, mate, you okay? Okay. They're really good with people who are having a crisis. So to answer your question around about way, it depends if, you know, how old is the person? Are you their guardian? Are you just a concerned friend? Where are they? But as a relative, or as a therapist, or as someone, you know, immediately close to this person, you can call a critical action team to come and do a assessment. And they'll decide whether or not to section somebody, which means you coming off to the psych ward for a little while we get you stabilized. Yeah. I live by their problem is not my problem. And that sounds really, really, really awful. But I can't, no one here wants vicarious trauma, but I will do my very utmost best for anyone. So you just need to know what your options are, how to assess the risk, immediate or possible, what course of action to take. Is it them going to be resourceful themselves? Do they need some assistance? Sometimes you might know something so clearly, like, when did you last have your meds checked? Oh, I don't. I just get the script filled. Oh, okay. and your suicidal thoughts are getting worse. Yeah. Do you know how many times I've heard that? I'd say to them, about 9 times out of 10, when someone's about to kill themselves, they hadn't had their meds checked. And all they did was get their meds checked and found out they were on the wrong medication or the wrong dosage. When do you think you can make an appointment to go back and see your doctor or your psych? Well, I'll make it this afternoon. Sometimes a wake-up call is useful. They can't see the bleeding obvious. Well, they don't know that they could do that, a bit like the blind man. So you're not expected to know everything, but what you can do, you can say things like, well, you know, in the past when you've been like this, what's helped? You know, what works for you?
Nothing. I've often heard that. Nothing helps. No, sorry.
Well, you're still here now, I'd say. So why haven't you done it yet? I'd say. I say that. I wouldn't say that in a Lifeline context because I'm not there anymore. I've got nothing to do with them. I'll probably get, you know, I would get drummed out and hung, drawn and quartered. But when someone, you know, who says, oh yeah, you know, you thought about it, and I'll sometimes be, depending on the relationship with the person, I might be a bit provocative and say, well, how come you haven't done it yet? And that then tells me why they haven't done it yet. What is the resource, or what is the part of them that's keeping them alive? It's a good question to ask. How come you haven't, you mentioned it, but have you ever tried? No. You've been talking about this for months and months and months. How come? What stopped you from doing it? And then you'll be given a gem. But you have to draw it out of them, not therapize them.
So I had one quite a few years ago, and it was a mother with kids, and I felt like it was imminent, and so I talked about, okay, so if you made plans, have you made plans for the kids? So where are the kids going to go and live? And I think I went right to the extent of saying, oh, okay, so they're going to be raised by such and such. And I can't imagine a 16-year-old sort of wanting to ask a mother all these questions. And so who's going to play that part? You know, and it was actually, I spoke to that woman years later. I had a lot to do with antenatal deaths, and so that's what it was about. And she said that was the point, that she stopped and realized the next 16 years of her children's lives, and you know, those formative years of, you know, and she said that was actually the turning point. That was where she went, oh,
turning points. That's
I can't do that.
I'm glad you've mentioned that word, turning point. That's the turning point. The turning point is, I should have mentioned that. The turning point is the point where they actually, think of it as like the crossroads, if you like, this way or that, but they're at that point. The turning point is when they turn away from doing it. So if you can get them through conversational to get to a turning point, or through self-realization, who's going to find me? Oh, that's awful. Oh no, you know, and they hadn't thought about it. You know, so sometimes you just got to have that rapport, though. That's anything. You got to be able to, you know, it could be a really slow conversation. You know, that conversation about who's going to look after your kids might have gone on might have taken an hour to get to. Might be 10 minutes. But if they get to a turning point, then they're not going down that track anymore. And I'm glad you mentioned postnatal depression, because I had someone with postnatal psychosis, which is, I didn't realize how common that was. I'd never heard of it. Have you heard of it? Postnatal psychosis. It's huge and it's deadly. So if you've got a recent mum who's depressed, alarm bells, because, so how did I scam my way into that psychiatric ward in the North Shore in Sydney? Someone got me to go see a woman, beautiful lady, beautiful, stunning lady, but she was in a wheelchair now. Because she jumped from the top of a building, but it didn't kill her, but it broke her back, and she was permanently from, you know, neck down pretty much. And turned out she'd had a baby. The husband had never been too supportive, And then she sank into postnatal depression, or she wasn't really sure. No one could really spot it. And then one day, you know, lovely husband said, "Oh, why don't you just, you're such a miserable cow. Why don't you just kill yourself?" She goes, "Okay." And she just went off like a, you know, like a stage hypnosis person, like a zombie, top of the building, jumped. However, it didn't kill her. She was diagnosed with postnatal psychosis. It's deadly. And anyway, I got into, someone asked me to go see her, and I got into, she was on a 24-hour suicide watch, because all she could really do to kill herself was choke herself on plastic bags. What? But she was also, because the injury was quite recent, in a hell of a lot of pain. So I was in this little padded cell with her, and one of the guards, and I just did this like guided imagery kind of thing. And after we finished, she was really sort of calm and pleased. And I said to the woman who was sitting there watching me, I said, "Was that useful?" She goes, "That was so good." I thought, "Oh, that's good." I don't know what happened to her, but yeah, you should look up postnatal psychosis. So that's probably another red flag. The other thing, when people kill themselves, generally they're intoxicated in some way, drugs or alcohol. Okay, and they've probably tried before as well, and they're also possibly alone. People don't kill themselves around other people very often, or not as often. People just go off into the woods and hang themselves or whatever. Another big one, which goes unreported, is motor car crashes. You know, it was a quiet road, just drove into a tree. It's just put down as an accident.
We've got a couple of questions laying up here.
Yeah.
First one, Yvonne.
She moved again. Where is she now?
Okay. When you were saying about, I remember years ago, you know, when you're saying about the way people kill themselves, I had one guy that told me, I said, "Have you got a plan?" And he said, "Yeah, I'm just going to drive out into the desert until the car runs out of petrol." And I thought at the time, a lot younger than, I thought, it's a stupid plan. But apparently I found out later it's quite common.
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Yeah. But anyway,
you'd be amazed. The creativity is amazing. How are you going to kill yourself? In fact, I sometimes ask it with like probably too much curiosity. But that deep curiosity, they're being listened to. It's like, my God, I'm finally talking about this with another human being. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. It's almost conspiratory. I'm going to do this. And then I thought, what I'll do is like, wow, they wouldn't have told anyone this. This conversation, there's people, they hide in the bush on the side of a motorway and wait for a big truck to come. And then they sprint in front of it. You'd be amazed how people kill themselves. And it's put down as an accident, mostly.
So Clive, when you were talking before, you said about, the woman in Queensland that saw a hypnotherapist and then went and jumped off the boat.
Completely unrelated. That's the thing. It's just
I didn't read that. I didn't know about that. But well, I'm sure the papers would have blown it up, did they?
Yeah.
That it was connected, which is what they did to the well-known hypnotherapist over in England many years ago, when a young couple went, after a stage show, a young couple went home in the cold, and they found them. Do you remember that? They found them in the shed.
Not McKenna.
No, not McKenna. Before him, the guy that McKenna took his stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, they blamed the hypnotherapist, but what they later found out was the couple, it was a really bitterly cold night. The couple were canoodling in the garage, and it was the fumes from the cars. They accidentally killed themselves. But what also too, with my training way back in Lifeline, you know, they used to tell us that you can do the best session with someone, and if they put the phone down and just turn away and just top themselves 10 minutes later, it's not my fault. You know,
no, it's not.
It's their decision. So
you're not outcome. You're not being performance managed. You're not. You don't have a KPI of how many people you're allowed to, knock themselves off and how many you can save. It's not you. It's nothing about you. And I'm talking to everyone here. If someone wants to kill themselves, generally they won't tell you anyway. You won't know about it unless you ask them.
It's
So
pressure. I
yeah,
used to think, oh my God, what if somebody goes and tops them? And they said,
and
it's
the
not your fault.
It's not. It's not. And the other stupid thing is, how many times is it reported? And it's not, by the way. I'm being ironic. Person kills himself after seeing a psychiatrist. Person kills himself after seeing psychologist. Person kills himself after seeing GP. Person kills himself after seeing the 9 o'clock news. Nothing. So they've always done something just before they kill themselves. But no, it's a hypnotherapist. Yeah, it's bullshit. Most people who kill themselves as well are on medications, which means they've seen a psychiatrist or a GP. Yeah.
We have some more questions as well. Lily, did you want to ask your question?
Thanks. Clive, an obvious question that keeps coming to mind is, I don't know that I've heard it yet, but assuming that you're speaking to a part that's been triggered, you know, it's kind of like something's tipped the scale. The simple question that comes to mind is, what do you need right now?
Yeah, look,
which validates them and gets some conversation going as well.
Absolutely. What is it? You know, how can we? Well, hello, Lifeline. How may we help? Is the opening line. How may we help? It may we help. That's permission. How might I be able to help you? Meaning, I don't know if I even can.
To me, that feels like a different question.
Yeah.
I don't.
No, but you're right. What in this moment? What's keeping you alive? What do you need to keep you alive? How are you going to keep yourself safe in this moment? You know, what is it you need right now? And it might be just to get something off their chest, or it might, it could be anything. You're right, 100%. Could be anything.
Because maybe the situation prior has highlighted what's missing.
Yeah. Well, that's the other reason of the question. What's caused what's happened such that you've been driven to this, or words to that effect. Yeah, not very elegant way of putting it, but what's it take? What's happened? Tell me what's happened. What's happened that has made you feel so desperate or so hopeless? What's happened? And then you're going to find out, and that in itself might tell you what's missing. Husband just died, dog died, just got raped. Who knows? So, and that could then help you perhaps steer them towards finding how to regain something that will help with that immediate need. But we don't prescribe as much as possible.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
we have another question from Mandy.
Hi, I know we're about to run out of time, so I'll try and be quick. So
right.
I had a situation last week on a public holiday this week. I'd had one drink, but I don't really drink much. So that
one
was
of those big glasses.
a nice Campari soda. Anyway, got the call. The person was a client that I have a good connection with. They were 3 hours away on the road by themselves.
Alone.
Yeah, it was very confronting. I obviously had to make some calls while they were driving.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like I could say, hold caller, I'll just get the other phone.
Yeah.
So I rang my supervisor when I was, after speaking for about 20 minutes with the person and getting them to stop on the side of the road to kind of calm a bit. And to the point where they said they were okay, and they.
Sorry, in what capacity was this? Was this you as a friend, as a hypnotherapist?
Me as a therapist.
Therapist, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And this was a recent client or something.
A current client that I've been seeing for quite some time. Who actually seemed to be pretty good on a really good trajectory, but had some big financial issues. Yeah. Eventually, I spoke to my supervisor and I spoke to a good friend who's a clinical psychologist. So I spoke to both, And they told me different things about note taking. Their concern was not just the client, but also protecting me as a relatively new therapist, about 2 years since I graduated, I think. And one said to one said to take very detailed full sentence notes, and one said, as in, like, you know, I said XYZ. The person said XYZ. And then the other person, my supervisor, said, take very brief, just dot point notes. I'm wondering what the advice would be on that. That's the first question. And the second question is, you know, what I've said to this client subsequently, or the spouse, is I'm here in the background if required. They're now having medical support and friends support and so on. And if we are to go ahead with our next scheduled appointment, that I suggest we talk about how that would be connecting with the psychologist and GP that they're seeing. And so I'm just asking for advice on that, those two things.
So first one, note taking. Think about all the situations that I'll start with Lifeline first of all the situations that people are in when they're during a call. So for example, me as a supervisor, I used to, because before they changed the system, I'd have 2 phones. I'd be sat here at home. On one phone, I'll be talking to the police. On the other phone, I'll be talking to the person at Lifeline, listening to the conversation, trying to sort of juggle like this. So it's really trying to figure out in the moment. It's very, very stressful in the moment. What's happening? Okay. And notes, sure. You take bullet points. What's key things going on here? End of every single session. There's no notes in Lifeline.
Yeah.
They're ripped up. But there is a recording system in terms of, you know, you record your call, you just give a brief kind of like, you know, okay, X called, located here, this, and this, blah, 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 blah. Done. Now, in a therapy situation, first, well, in a normal therapy situation, say they're in front of you, you do whatever you do with notes, whatever whatever notes you're comfortable with. But this wasn't a therapy situation, was it? This is someone. This was outside of your office hours, or your normal sessions.
Yeah.
And they were calling, and you know, you were just doing the best that you could. I don't see note taking. You know, you might want to then, you know, just write a summary. That's if the psychiatrist or psychologist wants it, saying, oh, look, you know, one of your clients called me. They were really, you know, agitated. They were driving and I was really concerned about them. I suggest you monitor this. I think this might be useful for you. I wouldn't be writing too much more.
Yeah,
but that's my opinion.
That stressed me out almost as much as the...
I don't like taking notes because it's a difficult situation again, because this wasn't in front of you, because I think it breaks contact. You know, sometimes you might want to, that's important. Yeah.
Face to face, I'll just literally do a few dot points and then
anyone knows me. I don't even use intake forms anymore.
Yeah.
I don't write anything down. The second one about what was just... It
was about afterwards. So this person had not been seeing a psychologist or on any medication or anything like that. They felt that maybe they should be admitted. Sort of, you know,
do they have any family?
They do. The spouse was unaware that they had been coming to me, and so I got their consent to...
Yeah. Well, the spouse is well within his. If the person thinks they need help, the spouse is more than allowed to just call your state mental health team for them to do an assessment.
Yes, but they were 3 hours away on a country.
Yeah. Okay.
On a public holiday, so they couldn't even get their GP.
Cops. I go cops every time. It's cops, you know, for me.
Yeah. Okay.
It'll be, look, you know, I'm really concerned about you. Look, I'll get you some help. I'll get you some help. You don't go, I'm going to send the cops to you. They're going to take you to a psych ward and you're going to feel, you know, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do that. They're very, very gentle in those situations. And sometimes people feel the strength of, you know, when they're that low and vulnerable and hopeless, when there's a caring, compassionate kind of person in authority who's going to look after them, they actually generally most of the time respond really, really well unless they're off their faces. So if in doubt, cops, I wouldn't be putting in too much onto yourself. Their problem's not your problem. If the psych, whoever it might be, needs some more information, you know, you can say, look, if you need any further information, just give me a call. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. We're not trained in it properly, is what I feel. We're told, we're told like we could go to court or something and have to have kids for court. You know, this is.
What do you do?
But if you've called I was just say, like I'm in the position as a nurse as well. So
yeah,
I totally agree. I think first response is cops. You need somebody there.
I think we should all I'm sure we're all mandatory reporters, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually with children more than most things, but that children thing goes up to age 21, not 18. Oh, well, it might be state dependent again.
It's if you consider they're a serious risk, but
yeah,
serious risk is a assessment. It's still an assessment, and
you could argue that I'm not qualified, so I rang someone who was cop.
Yeah,
I wouldn't hesitate if there's no other, you know, 3 hours away on their own in a car. Well, you've got almost a trifecta there. Because they're also expressing concern, they're agitated, they've got means, which means they can crash their car as their way of doing it, and they've got no one with them. Red flag. Red flag, red flag. Can you see how you can start looking at this through an assessment point of view? Are they on their own? Are they intoxicated?
Yeah.
Do they have the ability, meaning do they have a rope in the boot? Or a gun or tablets or whatever? And
car.
The car is so common.
I think we used to call it 3 lemons. If you've got 3 lemons, you know, so you've got 3 situations, or 3. You've got a car, you've got them remote. So 3 lemons are like that's highlighted.
You just prompted me again with something else, because one of the biggest 18 times the national suicide rate is gamblers, pokies specifically. I was thinking about the lemons spinning. So if you're seeing a gambler with a gambling problem without hesitation, because if someone's got a problematic gambling a gambling problem, I'm saying a problematic gambler, statistically 18 times the national average, and of which in Australia there's, as of about 3 years ago, there was 180,000 people considered to be problem gamblers. Now they all have 18 times the national suicide risk. And a gambler comes to see you a bit depressed, owes a lot of money. For me, a gambler's a red flag. A postnatal woman's a red flag. What other red flags can we think of?
Middle-aged sole parent.
Yeah.
Financial issues. just
lost my job, or just split up. So some sort of loss, like relationship. It was all my life. I can't believe she's gone.
Then around suicide too. You know, you've got a little being around suicide. Like we've got a little town just down the road. They've got kids suiciding. I think we've had 2 in the last 6 months. All hanging themselves. So it's like this copycat.
Living Works Assist, definitely, Paul. That's absolutely right. That's a great one, because they do role plays in that. Paul's just put a link in the chat. So that's a really good one. I don't know if they're national or if they're or whatever. They certainly are in New South Wales.
I'll make sure I pop the link in.
Yeah. So those are some of the things which you might not have thought of as red flags, but alone, something they've lost recently, intoxication, gamblers, postnatal, on medications, self-harmed in the past, attempted in the past, gives you some sort of indication, what we're calling an invitation of lost. Oh, it's just not the same anymore. I'll never get that back. It just, yeah, I just can't be asked to do that anymore. I'm just over it. Invitations, they're all invitations. No matter how soft they might sound, the deeper meaning might be, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to kill myself this evening. And no one's asking, or no one understands me. And all of a sudden, you're invited into a conversation which you might not have gone into. And that might just save someone's life. And remember, I don't believe in, oh, they're just trying to get attention. It's just that doesn't even enter the risk assessment, because it's not about, they're just trying to get attention. Take it seriously every time. And it's not your problem. You can only do your best. But you've got to connect. I think they're the ones. Anything else, do you think? Was that useful? I didn't know, we're free.
Yes, thank you.
What if anything, because I always ask this question, I'm a pain in the ass, but it's such a habit. What, if anyone's heard something in the last hour that they hadn't even thought about, or it's like, oh God, or something. Has anyone had some sort of, one of those moments about anything? Just a no.
Yvonne's got a hand up. So
yeah. What you got? What you got, Yvonne?
Oh, well, yeah, what you're saying about, you only ask, are you thinking of suicide? Whereas not harming yourself. That
doesn't mean anything. No, I'm going to end it all.
But there are some people that I'm just thinking now, if I've got someone who's calling up for self-harming, the people that
this is the perverse thing about self-harm. It actually makes them feel okay. Self-harm, believe it or not, is a coping mechanism that stops people killing themselves in many situations. It's kind of, what? If I can just prove I'm alive, then I'm not going to kill myself. I'm bleeding, great. That pain makes me feel like I'm here. Another really common thing that I used to hear time and time again is, I just don't feel part of this world. I'm just different. I'm just not, it's like I'm from a different planet. They really feel disconnected from the human race, which, for whatever reason, they're disconnected somehow. But self-harm is, I've never stressed about self-harm until, it's down as a high risk factor. But if you ask the suicide question, no, I'm not going to kill myself. I'm just going to cut myself. I'm almost happy to hear that. Sorry, I didn't quite. Sorry, could you speak? Sorry, say again.
Most self-harmers it's a relief, that cutting, just that relief for a moment. So that's why they keep doing it. So.
Yeah. And they tend to stop doing it after a while. Kids are another one, by the way. Kids are all at it now, not just self-harm, but suicide. And there's an epidemic of anxiety and depression and school aversion and you name it. And they do kill themselves. They really do. Cyberbullying, social media, peer pressure, all that stuff. So whenever a kid comes to me, and I do see a lot of them. Never thought I'd deal with kids. And after a while, the parents in the room, I said, look, can you just give me 5 minutes with little Johnny here? Oh yeah, fine. I'll just sit outside the door. I'll say to little Johnny, what's going on, mate? Are you going to kill yourself? Depending on the age, I won't use the word suicide, because it's like, well, suicide. Are you going to kill yourself? Yeah. Oh. So kids who have got, depression, eating disorders, whatever, you want to be sort of finding out, especially if they've got that blank kind of psychotic stare. I'm joking. All right, you've clearly seen that I've got a sick sense of humor, but it's something which is really important, because no, it's not that you have to have a sick sense of humor, but I keep saying it's not your problem. And sometimes the situation can just be a little bit better if you can get them to feel just a little bit better by being heard. Yeah, no one understands me. You're the first person to ask me that question. Wow. And that might be all it took, because you've cared enough to really listen, whereas no one else just didn't believe them or weren't interested. It's kind of cruel, isn't it? That it can be that simple. I'm not saying it is, but it can be that simple. But you've got to be brave enough to ask the question. Their end of the sermon.
I was about to say we probably should try to get it wrapped up soon. But
yeah.
And thank you, Clive, for giving us an hour and a half of your time.
I don't know, is it?
Morning.
Yeah.
One thing I will say, of course, is that the hypnotherapist networking group that we've got on Facebook, the whole point of that group is really about continued professional development and supporting each other. So anyone here who might have additional questions or things that have come up for themselves, you can post in that group, and you know, hopefully the collective hive mind, for want of a better term, can help to contribute towards that. And you know,
I want everyone to know you really can't do anything too wrong. You're not going to, by asking a question, you're not going to trigger someone to do it. That's BS. Oh, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, maybe I'll do that. You can't really do anything wrong if all you do is listen and be really respectful and ask questions when you think there's some sort of invitation there. Otherwise, you can't do anything wrong. Just connect. And that's might be all that's needed.
I've had someone ask, which group is that? So I will post that.
So it's one of the Twitter groups. You're all on Twitter, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a Facebook group. So I've just posted that in there for those that aren't.
Yeah, it's on Lawrence's soon to be closed down TikTok channel.
Yes. Dance for 30 seconds.
Okay.
But yeah, thanks to everyone. We'll let you go for this morning. But I hope everyone's found this really informative and useful. And we'll see you all in the group.
All right.
Thanks. It's good to see you again, Clive. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you. Thank you.
Always informative.
And if this or anything else has caused you
you
to reach out, you can always phone Lifeline on 13 11 14. See ya.
Thanks.